Hello, my name is Chad Irwin, and I did my project on project-based learning in science. And this is a two-part series. The first part, I'd like to talk to you about the research from project-based learning, and then the second part, I'd like to talk to you about the amusement park project that we did in class and how we can relate it to actual events that occurred. Welcome. This is a topic I feel very passionate about. I like the idea of taking learning beyond the classroom in a real and meaningful way for everyday life. So I did take this picture at Camp New Hop, and it kind of represents the whole idea of taking kids beyond the classroom for a learning experience. The purpose of this page is to help people gain a deeper understanding of project-based learning by answering the following questions. What is project-based learning? Why should we use project-based learning? What does a good project-based learning design need? And also, why we should use project-based learning in the classroom. Project-based learning is something that I feel like goes deeper than just content. I like this quote. It says, "Never do for a child what he can do for himself. A dependent child is a demanding child. Children become irresponsible only when we fail to give them opportunities to take on responsibility." Which this piece right here is kind of like the underlining thread that I believe is very important in education today. And we need to make sure that we get that. With project-based learning, that pretty much is kind of the foundation for responsibility, which I really like that. On this page, I made a slideshow. So I could go down through the slides with you real quick and show you some of the things I learned from my research. Here's a picture of a project that we were working on in class. And I like this because it pretty much represents what is project-based learning in my classroom. It's messy, and there's all kinds of different people in groups, and they're working together, and they're trying to collaborate to form a goal, common goal. The next slide. I found out that there's 6 different types of project-based learning, and by definition, project-based learning is kind of the big umbrella. Everything else kind of falls up underneath of it. I learned that project-based learning is where students are centered, a student-centered approach to learning where teams collaborate with the goal to report, design, display, or present information. There's a different type of project-based learning. There's problem-based learning, and that is where it's an instructional strategy or curriculum design where student teams have a primary goal to solve a specific problem. And then the third type is scenario-based learning. This is a strategy that places the student or group in the context of a scenario and requires the learner to work through a situation with the primary purpose of exposure or to gain experience. This is a type where games are sometimes used as a tool to simulate a situation that has been given a set of rules or to work within a real-life situation. Also, there's 3 other types. There's inquiry-based learning, enquiry-based learning, and then work-based learning. There's a difference between inquiry and inquiry. Inquiry is basically a higher order of thinking where the students generate their own ideas and they come up with the goals and expectations for the project, and then they work through it and they form their plan on their own. So it's more of a student-generated concept, whereas number 5, inquiry, that's much broader. That's where there is self-direction from the students, but the focus for students is simply to just figure something out or find something, kind of like an exploration. Number 6, work-based learning, and that is where students engage in taking a work role or the job in a specific career to promote ongoing learning, where students utilize resources, opportunity, experience for a field of study. So that's their primary goal there. And I find that this is kind of an important thing to talk about because as you get into designing your projects, the one thing that I found is that it's kind of important to know which type of problem-based learning or project-based learning that you would like to present. One question that I pose is, why should I use project-based learning? And basically, to summarize this bottom piece down here, students will have a purpose to learn. They will have a purpose to learn. A project should give students opportunities to build upon 21st century skills as collaboration, communication, critical thinking, and other uses of technology, which will serve them well in the workplace and in life. This exposure to authentic skills meets the second criteria for meaningful work, an important purpose. A teacher in a project-based learning environment explicitly teaches and assesses these skills and provides frequent opportunities for students to assess themselves. I did find some interesting research on this topic because I was trying to figure out, well, what evidence supports the idea of using it. And one thing I found is this article called "Can PBL Close the Gap in Science Education?" And one thing that they focused on is a case study. And this was an interesting case study where you had 42 middle schools involved during a 2012-2014 school year. And it was a diverse environment. They had 55% free or reduced lunch. Half of the students adopted problem-based learning curriculum for physical and earth science. Half of the teachers received professional development, and the others used traditional instructional practices. What they found is that out of 100 teachers and 3,000 students, that's quite a few, that it did in fact have an impact on learning. And it did close the gap. In fact, about 8% performed better on end of unit assessments than traditional classrooms. And just to make it hit home a little more, that'd be 2 out of 25 students. And if you think about 3,000 students, that's a huge impact. So this concept in introduction feeds on the principle of asking the question why. Tapping into students' natural curiosity is the first step towards real science learning. Project-based learning in science nurtures this natural curiosity by sending our students on a journey of discovering and experimenting with mystery and wonder of science. We want to encourage students to watch and wonder about forces of living things and ask why. And that's that piece of the puzzle that I find is really essential when we start out our planning process and the design process, is making sure that we spend time on wondering why we do what we do, because it'll fuel that desire for the students to learn about their topic in a different way. Project-based learning experiences in science motivate students to understand the world differently and ponder why things are the way they are. Students learn more easily when there's an excitement for the subject or topic, and I can testify that that did hold true to the experiments that I gave in class. And I think you'll see that with some of the pictures. I kind of got crazy with some of the pictures with this project because it did communicate that excitement pretty well. This does not mean that we make the science curriculum less challenging, but rather that we focus on deep learning. It means we stress that science is, more than anything, about questions and amazement. The Science Exit Project became a summer school resource for New York City 8th grade students in 1999. Since that time, it has been utilized as a key part of the 8th grade science scope and sequence. So here we have another case study where they decided to go with this approach. And a project-based approach in learning is in keeping with the notion that students' immersion in a specific area of curriculum in an in-depth fashion can yield deep understanding of a subject area. So that's why they adopted that system there. Students will remember the challenges as well as the rewards that come with the completion of their projects. They will also gain deeper understanding of content and the process. They will find the research and investigation skills they learn to be useful as they continue their studies in high school and college and pursue their role as a lifelong learner. The material that we found in this section basically talks about the 21st century skills, where We're looking at comprehension skills, research skills, questioning skills, group processing, sequence, chronology skills, research with maps and globes, presentation tools, covers a big scope of ideas with the 21st century, analysis skills, communication skills, problem solving, critical thinking, and self-management skills and keeping them on task. The next slide, I basically wanted to pull out this one because it shows the teamwork and the accomplishments for providing a purpose for what they're working on in class. I also found some other research that supports what would make good project-based learning. And planning, there's 6 concepts that need emphasized. Number 1, create a need-to-know classroom. That fuels that curiosity. So I try to do that with my amusement park project. Number 2, emphasize the driven question, the heart of the project. Number 3, provide an environment for students' voices and choice. Number 4, focus and allow opportunity to develop all of those 21st century skills that we talked about. Number 5, frequently provide feedback and revision. Through class discussion, you talk about what they've learned, what they're having trouble with, different ideas that they can build upon, and also learn from other groups at the same time. So it's very powerful. And then number 6, publicly present the product. And that could be used with technology, video. I tend to want to try to use this concept of Google Classroom, and then that way kids can comment on the projects. Here's a design principle chart. It has 5 different steps where I like this chart because it does define the whole process of design by first starting with the end in mind. Sometimes we tend to jump to the first step is just diving into it, but you have to look at the outcome. What are you trying to accomplish? And with this design process, that might mean that you show them videos of what the end might actually look like or the end results. Step 2 is crafting the driving question, and that is a huge part of it. What question do they have, or what is the purpose of doing what they're doing? Step 3, planning the assessment. How would you strive to give them information on the driving question? How are they presenting to the class what they're doing? They may map out the project. That might be like a timeline, and then finally managing the process over here, which basically you're monitoring your classroom, your group, and your process starts over again. It kind of cycles around. You're always going back to that driving question. You're always going back to the assessment. And many times in my project, I found out that I would continuously be going in circles. Sometimes it felt like that because you'd start over. You'd have a problem that the students would run into, and then you'd just pretty much scrap it, learn from it, and then move on. So I kind of like this idea of a cycle. I also included the project checklist. I'm not going to go through everything on here, but it does go down through a very detailed idea for the teacher where you can go through and you can look and see, are you doing these things when you're planning your project-based learning system? And I found this to be really helpful over here. But then finally, we're back to the beginning. And as I scroll down, I like this picture right here because it kind of represents, are you ready to explore the world and dive into this project-based learning, which I will pick up with part 2 of my video with this part, the amusement park project. So thanks for listening so far, and we'll continue with part 2.